Financially, things were always tight growing up. So money is like this weird thing. Just I have this weird relationship with money because never had it growing up. And so again, I took it upon myself to be like, well, what can I do about that? So I learned that if you're gonna blame somebody, blame effectively. If you're gonna blame somebody for the wrong, blame them for the good too.
I was always fascinated by immigrants' story, and because I was one of them, I'm still an immigrant, even I'm a U.S. citizen. I believe the United States is the land of opportunity, and there are so many people in here that they can tell us the story we all can learn from and grow. For that reason, I have Dr. Shehz in the studio, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how he became from undocumented immigrant to an eye surgeon. He's got a fascinating story. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Amin. It's an honor.
Oh, thank you.
What an intro, man.
Yeah. I am so happy you are here because we have so much in common. You know, but when I read about your story that you came here undocumented immigrant and your father brought you here and now you're an eye doctor, eye surgeon, one of the top one, and then you do other stuff too, you know, and you went to technology, then you pivot to the tell me about yourself, you know, when you came here, and what is the story about undocumented immigrant, because you talk about that a lot.
Yeah Well, you know, you said it earlier, right? America's a land of opportunities. And my dad saw that opportunity, you know, and wanted to give his kids a better life. And so, just like many immigrants do, he picked everything up from India, and we moved to the U.S. when I was 7 years old, right? And he was like in his early 20s. Huge thing for someone to do. So I'm 7 years old. My sister's 6 months old. Our entire family moved here. We moved to Tyler, Texas, from India. Mumbai, India to Tyler, Texas. I mean, it's like, I can't even put into words. Like,
a huge change.
Yeah, it's like that. Really? Tyler, Texas, of all places? But no, so we came here, and, you know, you get caught up in the grind and the hustle, especially like kind of as immigrants, you know, you were coming here with that survival mentality. The last thing you're thinking about is, oh, maybe I should apply for the green card. And, you know, kind of there's a process you follow. So we came on a tourist visa, and I say we just never stopped touring. There's a lot to see, man. It's a beautiful country. So we lost status. And so I became undocumented. And that's how I grew up until I was 22 years old. So my entire childhood, I just kind of felt this like sense of uncertainty, right? Because I couldn't even get a driver's license. You know, I couldn't work or do any of that. And eventually, after a very long battle with the immigration system, got my legal status fixed, got my green card, and went to college, and just all of these doors just opened up, right? Especially when you become a U.S. citizen. And I think it takes not having something and then having it to appreciate the difference, right? I call it my superpower. My blue passport's my superpower, right? I mean, there's like nothing you cannot do if you're a U.S. citizen, and you know, I'm sure you agree. So that's how that started.
And you know, I'm so happy you mentioned that, because we don't usually, as a human, we don't appreciate what we have until, as you said, we lose it.
Yes.
And I experienced that too as well when I came here from Iran 30 years ago. I was a dishwasher, you know, went through the same thing. But I wasn't undocumented, because right after I got here, a month later, I got married. And, you know, the process, you know, because my high school sweetheart was here. And that really speed the process of my legal status.
Yeah.
But I had to go through a rough patch, like washing dishes, doing things to do what I want to do and get where I want to be. But my question is this: why, as an immigrant, we appreciate that, and a lot of people here, they don't get it?
Good question. I think it comes down to
The way we grew up.
I think it comes down to opportunities.
Because you came here at age 7.
Yeah,
You
right.
didn't grow up in India. You were grew up in India, but you weren't that age. I say, oh, like, I came here at 25. Mine was a little bit different, but
Yeah.
yours, you came here. Basically, you didn't see that much as India, poverty and all that. But you came here, but you still have that mentality that I am grateful. I love it.
That's a great point. I think, for me, my entire childhood was just survival mode, right? Survival mode. So I don't know if it's really, India or the US or anything like that so much as it is like how you grew up, right? No matter where you grew up, it's how you grew up. And so for me, there were 3 things that really kind of defined my childhood growing up. One was the immigration issue. I was like 13 years old, 12 or 13, when my dad was picked up by immigration, by ICE. And, you got to understand, I got to kind of paint the context. Like I'm the oldest, right? I have a younger sister. So oldest male Indian family. The responsibility for anything that happens with the family falls on you. And it's not like it was ever like said to me directly that, hey, like this is your problem. You have to kind of figure it out. But I love my family. I love my parents. So it was like this unspoken rule that I'm going to figure out this immigration thing, right? Like, Dad, what's going on? Why were you picked up by ICE? Oh, we don't have papers. Oh, well, what do we do about that? Okay. What lawyer can we talk to? How does the immigration process work? How do you go about getting a green card? I started to think like that 13 years old, And so like, that's a huge part of my story. Around the same time when I was 12 or 13, again, my mom was diagnosed with mental illness. She has schizophrenia and bipolar. And she started showing those signs. And it's so interesting, right? Like it's, yes, there's a genetic component, but also I think family stress or just stress in general, it adds to those symptoms. Like you have this organic pathology underlying in your genes, but then you have an environmental stressor and those symptoms show up. And I really think the stress of our early life in the US had a lot to do with my mom's mental illness, right? And so she started showing signs. And in schizophrenia, if you're not familiar, it's basically you have paranoia and you feel like, people are watching you. You see things that aren't really there. You see cameras and things like that on the wall that like are not there. And so it's a very bizarre disease process, hard to understand. My grandparents came from India when this was going on, and they thought that she was possessed by the devil, right? And it's like, it's laughable now, but if I put myself in their shoes, like they didn't even graduate high school. Neither did my parents. I'm the first in my family to even kind of cross that barrier.
And
right?
that mentality is very common back home.
Plus, it's very common back home.
It's very common.
And so I'm seeing all this. I'm like, wait, that's not right. It can't be just that. And so again, she has this thing. Well, what is it called? Schizophrenia. Well, what's schizophrenia? Look it up. Okay, how do you treat it? Let's find her some psychiatrists, right? Let's also treat the actual disease process. And then, this medication didn't work. That medication didn't work. So all of that is going on in my after the 13, basically, like my teenage years, immigration, my mom stuff. And then, things trifecta, things happen in 3. The third thing is just financially, things were always tight growing up, right? So money is like this weird thing. Just I have this weird relationship with money because never had it growing up. And so again, I took it upon myself to be like, well, what can I do about that? And Smartphone ER is my retail tech company that I started that we'll talk about. But basically, I started fixing phones as a hobby when I was 14, 15 years old. Back when those, remember the flip phone? The V3 Razor?
Yes.
Bro, I could tell you how to do anything with that V3 Razor. I would hack the crap out of that phone.
Oh my God.
So I would sell that service. I could make it, shine funny lights and stuff and ringtones and things like that. So I would sell that service at the mall, which is where my dad had the jewelry shop. And I was like, oh, like, okay, what else can I do with this? Then the iPhone launched. Changed my life. Cracked the screen on it, figured out how to fix it. All of a sudden, screen repair business, booming, right? No one in Tyler, Texas was doing it, so I'm the guy. Hey, there's a guy at the mall, weird brown kid that fixes phones, hit him up, right? So I got busy that way. So like that turned into kind of like this cell phone repair company that sort of helped my family too. So that's how my life was growing up, right? It was all about like, what can I do so that my family's okay? My parents are okay. Right.
You feel that obligation? You felt it, right?
Totally. Absolutely.
And why did you feel that obligation?
Man, that's a good question. I think it's innate, right? I mean, they're your parents.
It was something from the culture that you were carrying?
Yeah.
Or it was something that you really as a person wanted it to do? Because again, came here at 7. Something, somehow, somewhere changed you.
I think, because for a long time I had resentment for those things.
Toward who?
My parents.
Why?
Because I blamed my dad for the immigration issue, right? For coming here, which is a great thing, but then not applying for the proper steps so that we had to kind of deal with all of that.
He took a big risk.
He took a big risk, yes. And later on, I'm telling you, over the last like 3 years, my life has changed completely because I've thought through all of these things. I'm like, wait, I've been blaming my dad, right, for coming here and kind of, yes, he made a mistake and that caused us a lot of issues. But if he hadn't come here, I would not be tickling eyeballs for a living. There's no way, right? I'm an eye surgeon because he took the risk. So,
and you helping so many people.
Right. And so I learned that if you're going to blame somebody, blame effectively. If you're going to blame somebody for the wrong, blame them for the good too. Right? Give them credit for that. Don't look at it one-sided. So same thing with my mom, right? I mean, poor mom, right? Like she didn't have any control over her illness, but I was still like I wanted to go to like an Ivy League college and things like that, which comes from this weird pathological ambition thing that we can talk about. But I felt this obligation to not go. Not that I would have gotten accepted probably, but I didn't even attempt because 1, I didn't have a green card, and 2, I felt this obligation to stay at home and take care of my mom. So I went to college in Tyler, Texas at UT Tyler. Right. So I kind of held resentments for those things. Right. I'm like, man, what if I went to an Ivy League and what if we didn't have that immigration stuff to deal with? And what if my dad, had an education and was able to provide for us and I didn't have to worry about the money and all these things. What if? And I'm telling you, that's the fastest way to not be happy in your life. Right. Thinking about that what if and just kind of holding on to all of these resentments, right? Your parents did the best they could with what they were given, period. It has taken me a long time to get that in my head, right? So anyway, so to answer your question, why did I feel that obligation? I don't think it's just I'm this naturally great person and just, I don't think it's that, because then I wouldn't have the resentment, right? I think it's because I saw my dad be that for his parents. I saw my dad do that for his parents. And I was just like, that's what a son is supposed to do. And a son is supposed to fight, man. Show up, right? I would take a bullet for my family. That's how the mentality was growing up.
Yeah, the same here, man.
Yeah. And so I'm like, immigration, you're not going to kick me. Not until I'm alive, you're not going to kick my family out of this country. I'm going to figure out a way to keep them here, right?
That's why you got into politics?
Well,
a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit.
We'll talk about that. But, so it was like that. It was like this, no, you're not coming after me, over my dead body. Watch me, right? It was like that. And that is pathological. That's not a good way to live your life, because you can't control everything. The way I was growing up, I took God out of the equation. I'm God. Watch me. I'll handle it. That is a bad way to live your life. Bad way to live your life, right? Because what happened? Fast forward. Control freak, right? I'm like, oh, there's no way. My dad's not going to leave this country. We're going to figure everything out. So to go through the immigration process to get my dad his papers, it was like this crazy thing. And it's a cool story. I'll tell you about it. Basically, my dad was put into removal proceedings, and he had a order of removal issued by the judge, by a district court judge. So when you have an order of removal that says that you need to get out of the country, the whole process to get your green card changes. It becomes very difficult. You have to apply for waivers and all of these things. And the waivers have to show a hardship, right? The government is like, you made a mistake. You overstayed your visa. You overstayed your welcome. You shouldn't have. Now you're asking for forgiveness. Why should we give it to you? And so we were like, well, because if my dad leaves the country, he's our breadwinner. If my dad leaves the country, I'm trying to go to medical school. I'm trying to focus on my studies. My sister's super young. My mom has mental illness. My dad's taking care of my mom.
The whole thing would fall apart.
The whole thing would fall apart. Like, it's a survival thing, right? It was like my nuclear family, the family that I would take a bullet for, would have exploded. And so I was like, no, that's not going to happen. So we applied for the waivers. And I mean, I can't even tell you how much that took just to get those waivers approved. Years. Okay, years.
Wow.
We started that process in 2003, 2004. My dad's waivers didn't get approved until about 2019.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was a lot that happened in those like decade plus, a lot. Then once you get the waivers approved, now the last step before you get your green card, when you have a deportation order issued against you, is you have to go back to your home country.
And then come back.
You have to go to the U.S. consulate in India, stand in line, show them, hey, look, the government approved my waivers. Here's my story. Can I go back? And remember what I said. My dad is not leaving this country, because once you leave, you have a 10-year bar against you if you don't have those waivers approved, right? So once the waivers were approved, I was like, okay, thank God. Talked to the lawyer. Lawyer said, look, it'll be fine. It'll be a 3-week process. He'll go to the U.S. consulate. We already have everything approved. He just has to stand in line, apply, show them the stuff, get his visa, come back. It's like, okay, fine. I bought a one-way ticket for my dad to India. My hands were shaking. I never thought I was going to do that. February of 2020 is when he landed in India. He lands in the air. Okay, he lands and he's like, hey, everyone has masks in India, like at the airport. What is going on? I was like, I don't know. There's some talk about some virus. It literally just happened like over the last 24 hours. While my dad was flying, COVID kind of took the world by surprise. So he lands, he goes to the U.S. consulate, he submits his paperwork. They needed some extra stuff. So I'm overnighting the extra stuff that they needed. And this time it's about mid-March now. And then President Trump issues an emergency shutdown, basically, of all U.S. consulates all across the world. My dad's stuck in India. My dad is stuck in India. That process was, it was supposed to go for 3-4 weeks. He didn't get back until 18 months later, August of 2021. Those 18 months of my life, I was in my ophthalmology residency. So I was in a busy surgical residency program, learning how to be an eye surgeon. Dad's not there. All of a sudden, mom's alone. The family business, the smartphone ER company that I started, my dad was running it while I was in medical training. Now I'm the CEO.
And in a student.
And in surgery residency. So I'm applying for the PPP loan. And I'm trying to figure out the immigration process. Get my dad back. And I'm trying to make sure I do a good job learning my profession. I mean, it was like the craziest time of my life. So I say all of that to say, remember how I lived my life. I got this. I'm in control, right? God sent a pandemic to shut my control down, right? So that's why I say, like, those are the lessons that I've learned. It's like, you cannot control everything, right? You do the best you can. You control what you can control, but don't forget that there's a higher power at play, right? So don't become an egomaniac about things. But as a teenager, seeing my family at risk, survival is at risk. That's not how I was thinking.
Because, things usually goes wrong or not happening because of that scarcity mind. It happened to me many times. When you go to that scarcity mind, it kind of paralyzes you. And you can't go forward. I don't know why. But if you get over that scarcity mind, then things start changing really quick, really fast.
Yes.
Because we said, what is the worst case scenario is going to happen? You're going to be in the same place you were yesterday, but you got to keep going. But for you, why you didn't give up? With all that, that's too much for somebody in your position. When I kind of visualize it and imagine that, I'm doing my residency, all that pressure on the residency, and then your dad is away, the business is up in the air, mom's situation with the health, and how did you cope with that? Because some people, they will break down, man, be honest with you. They give up. They give up. You said, sorry, I can't do it. I don't know what to do. But you will still keep going. What made you keep going?
Love for my family. You don't back away when they need you the most, right? My dad is stuck in India, and I grew up telling myself, like, I'm either going to die or my dad's going to get his green card.
Stubborn, yeah?
That's it. It doesn't matter what it took. I will go knock on the White House's doors if I need to, right? It was that level of just...
drive.
The drive, yeah. Like insane, And so when my dad got stuck in India, I was like, all right, God, I don't know what your plan is, what the deal is, but let me take over now. Right? It's a crazy thing to like think and say, right? But you just don't do it. And the thing that suffered in all of this was my mental health, my sleep. I mean, it was non-existent, and my marriage. My wife, I met her in high school. She was my high school sweetheart, my ex-wife. That's how I got my green card, right? Just like
you go.
Just like you, yeah. So my green card was, not that difficult, right? I met her in high school, and growing up without my mom being present with her mental illness, like I kind of, the feelings I was missing of nurture and love and all of these things that you're supposed to get from your parents, I got from my ex-wife. And I thought that's what love is, right? But it was just this very unhealthy emotional attachment. That's what that was. And so it took me a long time to understand and realize those things.
Any kids?
No kids. So 10 years, we were married 10 years. And it took me a while to understand those things. But going back to the green card, so my process to get my green card was not very difficult. But my dad's was extremely difficult because of his deportation order, right? So that became the focus of my life all the way through my training.
And then when what point did you decide that you want to be an eye surgeon? Because eye surgery is very delicate surgery.
Very.
Nobody's going to mess with my eye. If I don't really trust, which is, if I don't trust the doctor, I say, oh God, I want to go blind.
Yes.
Why did you decide to be an eye surgeon? Is it the desire? It was the revenge of the society? It was, I didn't have money. I want to really make money. What was it? Really, truly, what was that?
Probably a combination of all those. So no one in my family has even graduated high school. Okay. I'm the first even to graduate high school. So there was a lot riding on me in terms of expectations.
It's very normal in our cultures.
Very normal. So the first thing was I couldn't let my parents down. Growing up, money was always very tight, right? And so for me, it's like, okay, what can I do? I can fix phones, and I can take tests, and I can kill my tests. I'm really good at test taking. So I was like, okay, smartphone ER, that was like, the cell phone repair business. But I never lost track of the focus of medicine, right? Because that was going to be my ticket out, right? You always hear doctors make a lot of money, right? Although I didn't know about the student loans
Yep.
and all this other stuff that comes with it, right? So that's a whole different story. But for me, it was like, okay, that's going to be my ticket out of this life of poverty. And that's what's going to make my parents proud and change their lives. So I'm going to do it, right? Again, it's all like, it sounds so cheesy to say, but it's just love. Like, I've just realized, like, I really just love my people and I will do anything for them, right? That was another big driver. So that was medicine, right? But then you get into, and the other thing was, when I was taking care of my mom with her mental illness, man, I was just fascinated, right? The mind is a beautiful thing, right? The questions that you're asking me, they're coming from your mind. Everything that we have been able to create in this beautiful world came from someone's mind. So the mind is a beautiful thing. And for me, growing up, watching my mom's mind not like support her anymore, right, was devastating. And she was very like smart in school. People joke, they're like, oh, you get your genes from your mom, right? Like, she was really good in school and stuff like that. But then, you know, those things started happening. I was like, man, what happened? What goes wrong in the human mind that you see things that don't exist? How does your reality get shifted and altered? So that fascination with the human mind and just the human body was another reason. So there was like genuine love for the human body in medicine, right? There was that. There was this, it's also going to save my family from poverty, and it's also going to make my parents proud, and I'm good at school. It all kind of made sense. So I go in that direction. But then when I started to get more into medical training, what I realized is that I'm an outside the box thinker. And when you are a trainee in the medical system, there's no room for outside the box thinkers. You do things like they are supposed to be done. Why? That's how they've always been done. Why? Because we have these, bureaucratic organizations that say that this is how things should be done. And that's it. And I hated that. It felt suffocating. Freedom and autonomy are like my core values, I've realized, and you didn't have any of that as a trainee in the medical system. And that really leads to a lot of burnout. You probably hear a lot of physicians talking about this phrase, burnout. And It's not just physicians. It's like, just if you have a lot of stuff going on in life, you can cope, but to a certain point. Beyond that point, your mind can't cope and you're exhausted. You have nothing left to give. Your emotions are just completely gone, right? You're numb.
You're a machine.
You're a machine. You're not feeling anything. And I am in the specialty or in the field where it's really important to feel.
Yes.
You're a doctor. You should care about people and their pain. But when you have nothing left to give, when you are exhausted, dude, you just don't have it in you, right? So I started hitting that wall of burnout, especially with in that 18-month period when my dad was stuck in India, especially then, right? I was like, man, my dad may not come back to this country. I may not see my dad for, I don't know, a decade.
But I still have to keep going.
Yeah. So like that became my focus, right? But so I started to like see those things early on in my medical journey. I was always like gung-ho, like neurosurgery. That's what I was going to do. I was becoming a neurosurgeon. Why? Ooh, you're a brain surgeon. Sounds great, right? Plus my mom's mental illness, and I liked working with my hands. And I was like, oh yeah, neurosurgery. But thankfully, I realized in medical school that, man, that is like, you got to really just want it. 7 years is how long it takes to be a neurosurgeon.
Yes.
After 4 years of medical school,
yes.
After 4 years of college, that's 8 plus 7, that's 15 years of training, right? And I realized that that's not me. I did well on my boards, and so I realized that options were open to me. So I tried out different fields, and ophthalmology in particular stuck out to me for a number of reasons. One is I am what's called a DO. I don't know if I have it on I don't have it on me. I'm a doctor of osteopathic medicine. So I went to a DO school, not an MD school. And when you go to a DO school, you are told, the conversation is that, hey, it's going to be really hard to match a competitive specialty. So imagine a guy like me, pathologically ambitious. You're telling me, hey, driven. You're telling me that we understand you chose the DO route because you didn't really know much. But now that you're here, we're telling you, forget about subspecialties. Forget about ophthalmology, neurosurgery, radiology. It's not going to work out, right? I'm like,
watch me.
Hold my coffee. Watch me, right? So I did well on my boards, and ophthalmology was one of those things where it's like, you know, getting accepted into ophthalmology as a DO is like very difficult. And I was the first DO that my residency program accepted to train. And I'll be honest, like, that was attractive to me, right?
How did you feel? Proud?
Dude.
Like say, I'm the king of the sky, brother.
It felt really good. I remember the program director called me. He's like, you know, there's like this whole match process you go through. And then when you find out, then you get a call from the program director. And he called me and he's like, we took you. I was like, I cannot. Did I just match Dean McGee Eye Institute? Oh my God. It was like a top 5 program in the country. I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, Dr. Skowski. And, you know, I always joke, I say like, I got lucky because that year, usually they take 4 people. That year they were taking 5. So I was just like a little +1. I just got in, just barely got in, you know? No, it felt really good. So that was another big reason. And then the other thing has to do with NASA and space. And I can go into that if you
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's so interesting. You and NASA and the space. And
yeah. When you grow up undocumented and illegal, you have no identity. You can't even get a driver's license.
Yeah.
I was always fascinated with space. Okay. And I was like, why? Why do I have this fascination with just looking at the stars? Like, am I like mentally challenged? Like, why am I just looking up all the time? What is going on? And I thought about it. And, you know, when you grow up with uncertainty, especially as an undocumented immigrant, you feel like you don't belong. You don't belong. You don't even you're an illegal alien, right? But when I looked up, that feeling of belonging, like I matter, that clicked when I looked up. Because if I don't matter here, if I don't belong here, at least I belong in the universe.
You are part of it, and I'm thinking of it. You're kind of right, because that's the planet.
We're all stardust, buddy.
We're all
carbon molecules, right? So at least I belong in the universe, as part of the universe. I'm one of a piece of the universe. And that feeling never left me, that belonging that I craved. That feeling was the core of me wanting to become an astronaut. I actually wanted to become an astronaut. I wanted to do something in my life that would impress someone so much that they would have no choice but to accept me. I spent my whole life trying to be seen, right? And so I went down that road, and I read somewhere that they were sending doctors into space, ophthalmologists in particular, because there was a lot of research being done on like vision issues in space with astronauts and anti-gravity, like zero gravity. And so I was like, okay. So I went to medical school, became an ophthalmologist for one of those reasons, right? Because at the time that I was figuring out specialty tracks, I learned about this. I applied for internship at NASA. I got in. I got to spend 2 months with an astronaut. I got to live with him. Crazy experience of my life, man. Chris Cassidy. You should have him on your podcast.
Really? Okay.
Chris Cassidy. He was a Navy SEAL. And that wasn't enough because of pathological ambition. So he went to become an astronaut, and he did.
Oh my God.
He went to space, and I got to live with him. And that's also a crazy story. I just randomly reached out and got lucky. And we would sit outside, we would look up at the stars, the same stars that I used to look into, right? And felt that sense of belonging. And he would describe how it felt like, man, how it felt like to float in space and look back at our planet Earth.
Wow.
Big, blue, beautiful marble. And you're right there, you're looking at it. You're suspended in the cosmic void, looking at Earth. And that's where you realize that all of these borders that we create between each other, within ourselves, they're all fake. They don't exist. All you see is one. There's oneness. So it's called the overview effect. Astronauts describe it, and they feel like this sense of unity with all of humanity and this like deep inner peace. And that completely changed my life in terms of how I view about the world and everything, right? So that was another big reason why I chose ophthalmology, because again, as a DO, you have to stand out if you're going to match a competitive specialty. And not everybody's getting into a NASA internship, right? So I thought that that was going to help me look different on paper and plus kind of captivate my imagination. So all of those reasons is why I chose ophthalmology. Plus, you get paid really well too. So.
Yeah, that's a good part. But I love what you said, that we all belong to a planet, to the planet Earth, because when you think it like that, then it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, you're Christian, you're Hindu, you're, what country, what nationality, what is the color of your skin. We all belong to a one thing. Yes. We call it, as you said, planet Earth. And at the end, we're all going to die. We talk off camera, and then we were talking about that, why people are so greedy, why people are so holding on to stuff. And they're just going to push each other, hurt each other. Like with everything is going on right now as far as the politics you see, Iran and Israel, this, Palestine, Israel, it's so demotivating.
Totally, man. I mean, and I have a theory on that. I mean, it's called pathological ambition. I know because I've lived it, right? We are just chasing validation and success, right? Mindlessly. We build all these walls of achievement. I mean, I should show you my office. I have like 13 degrees there. And it's like, I call it my wall of pathological ambition.
But in one point you were thinking, let me get back to it. Yeah. Because in one point you were thinking that all those achievements, that's what describes Drew.
That's what was missing, I thought. My sense of belonging that I craved. I thought if I could achieve just enough, if people could just see me.
You were trying to prove it to people.
I was trying to achieve belonging. You can't achieve belonging. You have it. We all belong.
Because you care about people's perception of you. You got to admit it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. We all do that.
We all do. Yeah.
But when you get over that and you saw the sky, you saw the planet, and you talked to astronaut, you said, holy shit, I achieved all of that.
And I still felt empty.
I still felt empty. When I look up and I see the sky and I see, oh my God.
Yes.
Now I understand.
Yes. We are all interconnected, right? As humans first. We are all humans first. We all feel the same things. We all want the same things, right? Yes, culturally there are differences, but if you go deep into the cultural differences, it's all about what? Some belonging, feeling love, safety, security. We all want the same things.
Yep.
But we forget them because, like you said it, people's perceptions of how we're doing, right? Imagine this, man. Like I think about this so much. You mentioned politicians, leaders, right? Imagine if they can experience the overview effect. If they realize that they are not different from the ones that they're leading, that we are all part of one.
Do you think it would make him to become better leaders?
I think it would reduce those conflicts, these deeply entrenched conflicts that we have all across the world, right? The one that's going on now overseas and so many others. I think if leadership could see that we are all one, that we all belong, that we all want the same thing, if they can have that perspective, I think those conflicts
I don't think so that will happen, brother, because
it won't.
This is a politician. They all talk about the good games, but as soon as they take office, everything changes. Like imagine
Yes.
you say, I want to be an eye surgeon. I want to be an eye surgeon. Oh, this is great. And then you become an eye surgeon. You stop, or your perspective change toward human emotions and not helping them, which is, you said, the human emotions is a big part of what you do because you emotionally connecting with people.
Totally.
The skills and the surgeries, those are skills that you learn, you were good at it. But emotional attachment, emotional connections are totally different thing.
Absolutely.
I think politicians, when they get to the power, they forget about human emotions.
Why? That's my thing.
I don't know why. Is it the power? Is it the money? Is it the social status? Is it like getting back in another party? Or what? This is the thing. I have a problem with this country that it doesn't matter you're a Republican or Democrat. It's all about people.
Yeah.
It's all about people. If we are Muslim and we have a Christian, but it's about the people. You don't got to go shoot somebody. It's all about the people. You want the best thing for the people you serve.
Yes.
You want the best thing for your parents because you serve your parents. Why politician doesn't think like that? I'm red, I'm blue, but we're gonna get there. Why don't we go together? Why we don't help each other to get there? I don't get that.
I think a big part of it is ego, right? Like in order to realize that, hey, like we can do this together. Like I'm curious about your opinion, right? In order to be curious about someone else's opinion, you cannot be in judgment mode of their opinion.
Have you ever done joint surgery with another doctor?
Yeah, all the time.
Okay, how did you handle that?
Yeah, exactly.
How did you handle that?
It's a give and take. It's like, oh, okay, like that's your expertise. You do that part. I'll do this part, right? We're both doing it together.
Because of what?
We both have the same goal, doing the best for the patient.
What is your goal?
Doing the best for the patient.
Exactly.
Doing the best for people, right? But that's what I'm saying. Like, you got to let your ego down to be like, no, like, I might be wrong. That's the thing. Like, people are not willing to even entertain the idea that could you be wrong in your thinking? Could your thinking be flawed in some way? Because maybe of how you were brought up and what you've been told your whole life, right? And could the other person have a point? How can we stay in curiosity mode and out of judgment mode for each other? Because when we start judging each other, that's when these conflicts happen, man.
And one of the reasons that this country actually, be honest with you, is falling apart is because we're not sticking with each other. We're not sticking with each other. If we stick with each other and support one another, even though we have different ideas and with disagreements, but it's still, we can work together and we can make this country a better country. That's the big topic, but it's so important because we live in this society. You grew up in this society.
Yeah.
I spent half of my life here. And I've seen my culture, this culture, some stuff I don't get it. For example, you talk about the family. I know some people, they don't call their parents like every 6 months. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Brother, I don't get it. If I don't call my mom every day to just say, hi, Mom, how you doing? You doing okay? Everything's good. I can't sleep. I don't know how some people don't do that. I say, what was the last time you talked to your parent? I don't know. I give them a call probably 6 months ago. Or they live hour and a half away or 2 hours away, and they're not going to see their parents. And this is the good part. When they die, they say, oh, I miss my dad. I miss my mom. What did you do
when they were alive?
When they were alive. This is a big difference, I think, between us, culture, as an immigrant, we coming here and appreciate what we have and keep all those cultural. But I'm not saying all Americans are like that. No, not at all. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying majority are happening.
Well, it's that materialistic culture, right? Like it's like, money and power and fame and status, all of those things. Those are Western concepts, right? Like in terms of like, that's how you prove that you're successful. Are you successful? Show me how many followers you got. Show me your bank account, right? And then come talk to me about success. That's how the thinking is. But, and I think it comes down to having these conversations, which is kudos to you for even having these conversations, bringing these topics up, right? Because people forget. Like, if you and the people that you surround yourself with are all driven for what society deems success, money, power, status, fame, then you're kind of siloed, right? You're just going to keep chasing that and always feeling that emptiness. That was my story. But people like you who are willing to have these conversations, the more and more we can have these conversations, the more people can that sort of are sleepwalking, I call them. Like I was one of them. They can wake up and be like, oh, yeah, actually, I don't know why I'm chasing all of this. What do I really want? What does success mean to me? When was the last time I actually connected with my loved ones? When was the last time I called my parents? Yeah, you're right. Like, I haven't done those things. I believe that people are inherently good. That is my bias forever.
I think the environment.
I don't think like people are bad. I think what happens to people, bad things happen to good people.
I give you an example. Right? This is, I told my staff the other day, you go to 7-Eleven, the price of the bottle of water is $2. You go to your local gym, it's $3. You go to airplane, they sell you for $7. The water is water. Where the water goes, that's different. That environment will define that price.
Yes.
Our environment is so important. What environment you put yourself in. You were poor, and now you make money. What changed? Are you happier? You have comfort. Don't tell me you don't have comfort.
Totally. Yeah.
That money that you didn't have now you have as an eye surgeon, that makes you more comfortable, not necessarily make you happy.
Correct.
Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Happiness and really fulfillment, right? Feeling just like joy on a daily basis. I think for me, it comes down to like connection. Especially with your loved ones and with each other, with human beings, So, like, for example, yes, like I do well financially, but, instead of buying a Rolex, what I spend money on? Therapy with my parents. I hired a therapist, and my mom and my dad and my sister, we all go. And we're like, hey, let's talk about some of the things that like maybe are difficult to talk about, but let's unpack those things so that we can connect better as a family and show each other that we really love each other, right? Like, so that, and also like purpose, right? Like everybody talks about purpose, like what's my purpose? What's my purpose? I was so burnt out in medicine that I came this close to quitting. I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. Because of all the things I mentioned, like the lack of autonomy and lack of freedom and all these things, right? But man, I am so glad I didn't. And I'm so glad I pushed through because like my purpose has like evolved now. I not only help people see the beauty of this world, but my bigger purpose, I think, in life is to help people see their own truth. By my example, just like I'm sort of unraveling my life story to figuring out my own truth, like what is true and what's not, what is a story that I've been telling myself, which is not true, and what's actually true, right? I actually get to share my story with people like you and help others understand their own. Like that's sort of my bigger purpose now.
What you do as a profession, I define you as a great surgeon that you do as profession, help other people. But on the other side, I think you are a person that you want to understand the beauty of the world and helping other people and discovering the bigger power. And you can't run from that because we were talking almost for an hour and then you were chasing your ego. Now you are not.
Well, it still comes up.
Yeah, it comes. Yeah, it comes up.
It still creeps up.
Yeah, but it still is a little bit fading because you say that now I got this, I got that, and now what is my higher purpose? But as you said, people do not understand how close they are until they quit.
Yes.
Like if these people watching, listening to you, and you say you were about to give up, but don't give up, folks. Don't give up. You are so close to win. Don't give up. Just keep going. Keep going. Keep going. But what is in the future for you?
Well, so like I mentioned, at least in this
what
phase,
you're up to.
Yeah, right. $1 million question, man. All kinds of things. In this phase of my life, I'm just trying to get better at understanding my own story and then sharing the lessons that I've learned from my own story, right? Like I am an expert in my own story. just like we all are,
Yes.
right? The challenge is, do you understand it? And the story that you've been telling yourself about your story, is it true? Where's all the BS? Where are all the limiting beliefs? Where's the victimization of yourself, right? Let's get out of that, learn the lessons you learned. And then I think the highest purpose of life is to understand your story and use the lessons of it to help others. Your story is your gift, right? I really believe that. So for me, it's like, okay, how do I tell my story? Well, I got to learn how to speak, right? I got to learn how to speak. So speaking on various platforms, like whether it's podcasting or otherwise, is something that I'm very passionate about. Over the last year, I've started to speak in high schools, colleges.
Love that.
Medical schools. In 3 weeks, I'm going to be speaking in South Africa on the TEDx stage.
Amen.
About my story, really around the overview effect. So that's what I'm up to in this next phase of life, is to tell my story so that others can be empowered from it at the biggest stages that I can find that will let me be on them. And then the other thing is, humor goes a long way in talking about really hard shit.
Yep.
Right?
Which is nobody wants to talk about.
Yes. And humor is in absurd things. And I can't think of a lot more things that are absurd than my crazy ass story. So when I extract everything out of my story, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of funny shit in here. Like, you know, for an egomaniac, control freak to be smited by God by a pandemic that shut the world down.
That was a powerful, man.
So there's a lot of humor in everyone's story, I feel like, and it's a great way to just talk about really hard things, right? It's just a great communication tool. So I'm learning stand-up comedy, been taking classes and actually doing some shows and stuff like that too. But it's all for that higher purpose, right? Like, I want to get really good at having really hard conversations in a relatable way to where it clicks for people, right? People feel something, because like we were talking about,
Yep.
people don't feel things anymore, right? I was one of those guys, you know. So comedy, speaking, and then just, man, it's a privilege to do what I do as an ophthalmologist.
You're helping so many people, man. And I always say,
just keep doing that.
Everyone has a story, or a story is unbelievable. And you know what you do right now as a profession and helping people, patients, and what you're trying to do and get in the path of other ways that you can help with people is so rewarding. And I appreciate you doing that. Really.
Thank you so much.
And it was a really honor talking about your stories and coming all the way here from Dallas. That means a lot. And I think we're going to be great friends for life.
Thank you so much. This was an honor. You asked really good questions. You went deep, which I appreciate, right? Like, I don't care what your favorite color is, bro. Like, let's go deep, and you went deep.
Yeah. The worst thing in life, man, is regret. Yeah. We don't want to have a regret. And I don't think so. You're going to be a person, you're going to have regret because you are very driven and you're going to go get it. You said, show me, watch me. I want to go get it. That's the great attitude, man. And this nation needs people like you to go talk about this is stuff that nobody wants to talk, especially from the immigrants. And everybody, if you guys are listening or watching, you're asking why this country builds based on immigrants, because we know what we got and we don't give up. And I'm not saying everybody else is giving up, but we know what we got. And I'm grateful.
Amen. And I will add one thing to that. If you think about the overview effect and the fact that we came from a piece of the universe, we're all immigrants, bro.
We're all immigrants. I agree with that.
Temporary guests on planet Earth.
That's powerful. But thank you for here, man. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.